Welcome back to Introduction to Programming. This is video 24 in our series. My name is John Dwayne. Today we're going to continue our Windows Form application example. We got pretty far the last time with it. We were able to actually do the artwork, which is to create the design surface, the actual form control itself. We added label controls in 4 places. So a big title, a smaller description of what the program is, and then even smaller labels to describe what goes into these 2 text boxes. So these text boxes are also controls. And then finally we have 2 command button controls down here that we labeled Go and Exit. The controls that I'm going to be referring to in code, I would actually give a descriptive name to, and we can see those names in the Properties window, which I've moved over here to the right so we can see it a little better. So the date text box, you can see up here the name. This is the name that I'll use when referring in code, is TB date, TB prefix. For the message, TB message. And then my 2 command buttons, BTN go and BTN exit. The properties window is terrific in displaying to you the different properties that these controls have, mostly about appearance in the case of text boxes and command buttons. For other controls later on, the properties will give us information about their behavior also. But in this example, these are mostly appearance properties. So what we're going to do today is actually attach some code to these controls so that this user interface will actually connect to the program itself. Right now it's just a pretty form. So the code container for this form will be sitting right behind the form itself. So if I right click in Solution Explorer, the form, in View Code, we'll see that I really don't have anything there yet. Okay, well that kind of makes sense. Get rid of the properties, we're not going to need that now. Let's go back to the object, and if we were to double click Go, it creates for me, kind of like it did in the worksheet interface, a shell of an event handling procedure. In this case, the event is click, and it's the click of the command button named BTN Go. All right, so that should look a little familiar. Here we'll put the code that will execute once the operating system hears that click event happen. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert the code, the exact code that we had last time when we did this example in a worksheet. So I'm going to paste that code in right there. I think you might remember that we also had we declared a constant for the title. I'll put that up here, make a little room. So a constant string, calling it UI demo. Then we also had a button for exit, right? So let's get that one on here also. Actually, you know what? Let's go and create the shell from the form itself. Yep. And double click, and there's the shell. Let's get the code from the other program, user interface. Remember, this is user interface 2, and there's that. Okay, so you might say to yourself, this ought to work, right? Well, yeah, it ought to work, except for a couple of things, and I'll point those out kind of as we go. But let's start with button exit. This one is probably not going to work too well because it's just going to close the active workbook, but maybe that's all we need to do. So I mean, we'll test it and we'll see if that works. But let's go here to button go. This is a little more interesting. The variables that we've created for the message and the date are still good. They'll hold that data once we get it. Here's our two error checking procedures. One to check that the date is really a date, and this one is to check that the message box has some data in it. So this logic ought to look familiar. What's different with a form from a worksheet is identifying where the data is. So here, range, date, well, that's referring to a cell on a worksheet. Now we're referring to the text inside a text box. So we refer to that this way. Me represents me, the form, and then we'll say TB date. There it is. It found it for us. And so that's the control, and what we're actually referring to is the text property, and it found that for us. So there we go. Me refers to the form, TB date is the control, and text is the property of that control. That would return to us whatever we had typed into that field. So now it'll do the same logic as before. If not is date, this information here. So if it's not a date, then the message box will appear, tell us that we don't have a date in the date box, and exit. Then we go down to the message cell, which we can't use anymore. So now we'll do a similar type of reference, me, TB, and here's the other TB, message, and then dot TE, so all I have to do is type TE and text pops up. So if the text box called TB message has a property called text, and it will, but if that property is empty, then we'll have a message box that'll tell us that that is the case, and it will exit. Then when all that is taken care of and we've passed those two tests, we have to insert this data into our variables like so for the date, and like so for the message. Terrific. And I think this will work. So the only change we really had to make was references to the form's controls in those cases where we're getting data from those text boxes instead of from cells on a worksheet. So let's run the program from here. And there is our beautiful form. Let's type in a date, 11/5/2014. And as you all remember, that was Guy Fawkes Day. Remember, the 5th of November. Probably getting tired of me saying that. So let's hit go and see what happens. Ah, there we go. There's our message box. 11/5/2014 Guy Fawkes Day. We can click OK. And how about if we delete that? What happens? Ah, message not entered in message box. Good. That was what we wanted to happen. How about if we type AAA in here instead of a date? Ooh, date not entered in date box. Very good. How about if we just leave it blank? Date not entered in date box. Great. Notice how the program stays live for me. I can try over and over and over again. It didn't close the worksheet. It just brings me back to kind of ground zero here. So then back to 11/5/2014. and that is Guy Fawkes Day. Thank you very much. And then when we exit, the worksheet closes. So there you have it. Let's go back to here. That's our example of a Windows form. I think it's a much more professional look. I like the way it operates in a very smooth fashion, and it affords the user with I think a much more pleasing experience with your application. So let's wrap this up. That's all we're going to do on a single form interface. What we'll do next time is show you how to create a multiple form interface, which is much more realistic. That's how these usually work. It'll be a multiple form interface, and we will wire them together so that they act as a cohesive unit. Well, I hope video 23 and 24 taken together were helpful. Please subscribe to this video series and write comments about anything that wasn't clear. I monitor the comments, and I will definitely respond. See you next time.